بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We start the section on change, and this section has 3 lessons. Inshallah, we want to do 2 lessons tonight. 1 lesson remains, inshallah, for next time. One of the issues that have preoccupied the mind of human beings, especially philosophers, from beginning has been the issue of change. Because we see many changes happening in the world. So philosophers have been reflecting on these changes. Are these changes real or not? Because some people have the idea that changes are not real. The reality is everything is fixed. These changes are either superficial or just illusion. Some people have the idea that no, everything is changing, and if you don't see change, you should doubt your understanding. Maybe the change is so slow, for example, that you cannot understand. Okay? So some people thought the principle is change. Some people thought the principle is to be fixed. For example, Heraclitus had the idea that everything is changing. There is a famous sentence attributed to Heraclitus. It's not a philosophical argument, but it explains, to you very nicely his idea. He said, no one can take bath in river twice. In the same river, you cannot take bath twice. Means this is not the same river. It's changing.
And then the water is flowing?
Yes, because water is flowing, and also you are changing. You are changing, water is changing. And therefore, he had this idea that everything is changing, Heraclitus. On the other hand, we have some philosophers who are known as Eleatics. 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 These are from a place which was a colony of Greece, in Italy. In Italy, Eleatics. Eleatics means those philosophers who are from that part of Italy. For example, Zenon is from there. Parmenides is from there. So many philosophers from this circle, they were quite opposite to Heraclitus. They had the idea that everything is fixed. For example, Parmenides had the idea that to exist means to be fixed and eternal. To exist means to be fixed and eternal. No change, no beginning, and no end. Fixed and eternal.
Eleatic idea.
Yeah, Parmenides had, he's one of the Eleatic. Parmenides had this idea. And his student Zenon had the idea that haraka or motion is impossible. Parmenides didn't argue for impossibility of haraka, but his student even argued for the impossibility of haraka. And I think once I mentioned for you his argument when we were talking about on. So basically, for example, one argument is that if you suppose you have say distance of 1 meter, 100 meter, 1 kilometer, whatever. He was saying that this distance, like a line, can be divided into infinite parts. So if something wants to move from this part to the other part, it has to have infinite motions, and it's impossible. So, of course, you know that we can move, but he was philosophically proving that it's impossible. And the reason is that because we don't have actually infinite parts, it's potential, it's not actually infinite parts. Yeah, we say you can divide and divide and divide, and this can continue, never stops. But it's not that we have actually countless parts that you have to go through. In any case, we are not now dealing with their arguments. We want to give you different perspectives. So one perspective was for Heraclitus that says change is the main thing. One is for some Eleatics like Parmenides and Zenon, who say things are fixed. And even Parmenides had the idea that to exist means to be fixed and eternal. Okay? Then we have Democritus. You remember last week we talked about Democritus? We didn't meet him, but we talked about him. So he has the idea that everything is comprises of parts which cannot be divided. جزء لا يتجزأ. You remember? Those are like atoms. For him, atoms are not divided. So Democritus had the idea that those small particles are fixed. If there is any change, is just bringing them together or dissolving them, separating them. Like for example, you have some sands. You can bring them together, you can separate them. But he did not believe that those parts can be divided or can be moved or changed. Those are fixed. Then we have Aristotle, whose theory is the most advanced, most convincing theory. Of course, we will say that Muslim philosophers, although agreed with him in principles, but they made some changes, especially Mullah Sadra. But Aristotle is really very, intelligent, very, I can say, exceptional person. Yeah, we call Aristotle the first teacher. And it's amazing, when you really go into his discussions about any field in that time, how advanced he was, how much he was going into details and classifying, and in some hadith, there is one hadith that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Al-Hakimul Ilahi, Aristotle is Ilahi.
Was he a prophet?
Some people say maybe he was a prophet. But the way nowadays in the West they read him and understand him is different from the way that Muslim philosophers read Aristotle. Now, some people think Aristotle was a naturalist, maybe. But Muslim philosophers have different idea, and there are discussions about some of the books. In any case, Aristotle has very good theory, not perfect, but much better than Parmenides or Zenon or Heraclitus or Democritus. In order to understand the starting point, let us first bring the argument of Parmenides for impossibility of haraka, and then see what is the counter argument of Aristotle. Parmenides, as we said, had the idea that it's impossible to have a being which is changing. One of his ideas was that every being is also to be eternal. Yeah, he said it has to be fixed and eternal. This is his argument to prove that every being has to be eternal. He says, if any being, any given being, if it was not eternal, what was before? Was it a non-being, non-existence, ma'doom, something that didn't exist, or was mawjood? If it was ma'doom, it didn't exist, non-existent, how ma'doom can become mawjood? How non-existent can become existent? It's impossible. Because between non-existence and existence is tanaqud, is contradiction. Non-existence can never become existence. If you say no, it was mawjood, before this also was mawjood, then it says how mawjood becomes mawjood. This is what we say tahsilul hasil. When something is there, then you don't need to bring it. Yeah? Tahsilul hasil muhalun. When something already is there, you cannot say I brought it. It was there. I created it. It's impossible. So, with this fallistic, of course this is fallistic argument. This is not true, but he wanted to prove that nothing can come to existence, because if it was ma'doom, how can ma'doom become existent? If it was mawjood, then it is tahsil hasr. Mawjood was already there. So, Aristotle says everything before coming to existence exists, but as a potentiality, not actually. So, al-mawjudu bil-quvvah becomes al-mawjudu bil-fi'l. Al-mawjudu bil-quvvah, something which is potentially there, needs a madda, a matter. Yeah, because this surah, which is not yet actually there but is potentially there, has to depend on a madda, a matter. That matter is there. And that matter carries the potentiality of that surah. And when that surah is given to that matter, it becomes actual. Then that surah with that matter becomes a second matter for a higher surah. For example, Hayula, you remember Hayula? Al-Maddatul Ula, the first matter, the prime matter, which we said, they say it's from every aspect potential. Remember we talked about this last week. لا فعلية له إلا أنه لا فعلية له. They say that it has no actuality. If there is anything actual, it's that it is actually completely potential. You remember we talked about this? So, this hayula or madde ula, this prime matter, which is 100% potential, comes with a suratul jismiyya, with the form for corporeal existence. You can say corporeal form. Okay? Corporeal form cannot exist without madde ula, and madde ula also cannot exist with at least one form, because if it is 100% potential, it cannot exist by itself. So, madde ula plus Surat al-Jasmiyah, they form a basis for then another form being given, which Aristotle used to say, we have four major forms. Like, for example, soil, water, fire, and air. So, Jasm either becomes water, or fire, or air, or soil. Then on these, again, we can have another form which makes those different elements that we have. Yeah, we have oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, all these things. They become on top of this. And this can continue till we reach human beings, animals, plants, all these things. So, for Aristotle, when something is not yet there, it's not yet existing, it's not 100% nothing. It's quwwa, the potentiality for that exists where? In the madde, in the matter that is going to take this surah. That matter can be primary matter or can be secondary matter. And by secondary, we mean anything which is not primary. It can be really second, or it can be really third or fourth. All of them is madde thanawi. Okay?
I think there's a special term for this primary matter. There was a term which I was reading.
For what?
The initial thing that God created before the whole universe, this primary matter, which everything has been formed.
Yes, hayula.
Hayula.
Yes. But hayula cannot exist by itself. It has to be always with form. At least one basic form of Surat al-Jismiyah. Okay? So, this is the idea of Aristotle, which Mullah Sadra Avicenna also to great extent they accept, but they developed it further. So, according to Aristotle, instead of saying like Parmenides that everything is eternal, he had the idea that madde ula has always been there, but surah is created. It's hadith. Means it is preceded by non-existence. Surah is hadith, means preceded by non-existence. But potential for the surah is to be there before surah is given. So, this is what he was saying. Then Aristotle used to say also, and we also accept this, that changes are either gradual or instant. التغيير إما تدريجي أو دفعي. I say it in Arabic also because if you want to refer to the Arabic text you can understand. التغيير إما تدريجي أو دفعي. Change is either gradual or instant. If change is gradual, means haraka, movement. It's continuously changing. But if it is daf'i, is instant, It means at a moment a change happens, then it is fixed, then another moment a change happens. Okay? When we say moment, we mean by moment what? On. On. You remember we said on is like point for line. You know, you have line which has continuity, but a point is end of it. Time is also continuing, but on is the end of a time. Anything, whether it's a line or it's a harakah, anything which is gradual, if it is limited, its beginning and its end are not part of it, are end of it. Okay? So end of line is not line. Yeah? This is the line. End of it is had, is limit of it. That is not line. Time the same. So these harakat that are not gradual, Aristotle said they take place in on, instantly. When we say philosophically moment, we mean on, because in our normal conversation, sometimes we say, a moment, and a moment can mean 30 seconds. A moment can be 1 minute. A moment can be few minutes. That is our ordinary conversation. But when philosophers say a moment, they mean on. Means limit of time. Means no time. Something that you cannot measure it by watch. Watch is to measure what? Gradual process of time. Okay? So, Aristotle says, if the change is gradual, it's haraka. If it is instant, it takes place in on. After this change which takes place in on, we have a period of sukun, no motion, no change.
After gradual.
No,
After on.
after on. Then again, a change can happen. Imagine, for example, if you have a heart which has problem, and the electrogram shows no motion, then there is motion, then again stop. Of course, even here it's not exactly on because it takes few seconds. But suppose something is fixed, then a change, then again fixed. For example, I mentioned this example for you. For example, when something is about on, we said, for example, if something is moving towards the wall, this is gradual. But hitting the wall is not gradual. It's sudden and takes place in on. Okay? So, haraka can stop in on. But we have instant changes that take place in on. One on. Then maybe after some time another on. Okay. Mullah Sadr and Ibn Sina and all Muslim philosophers have accepted this distinction between changes which are gradual and changes which happen instantly. But they said that those changes that take place gradually are more diverse than what Aristotle thought. Aristotle thought gradual changes, haraka, can only take place in 3 categories. We are talking about gradual change, haraka. Haraka can be in kam. You remember we said we have 9 categories which are a'raz, accidents. One is jawhar. Still you have to think about that question. I hope you didn't forget that question. So, jawhar and 9 a'raz, accidents. Out of all these 10, Aristotle said only in 3 of a'raz we can have haraka. In kam, quantity, something can have haraka. How there can be haraka in quantity? Like growing. When something is growing, its size becomes more and more. Or when something is becoming smaller, thinner and thinner, for example. So this is haraka in what? In kam. Okay? The second category that Aristotle accepted occurrence of motion in it is kayf, quality. For example, you see you have a fruit like mango. It's sour. Then it becomes sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. Change in the taste. Taste is one of the kayfiyat. Yes? It's kayf hissi and madhuq. We have different types of qualities. One of the qualities is something that you can perceive by your 5 senses. Among them is those things that you can taste. Or for example, softness. You may have something that little by little becomes softer or becomes harder. This is haraka in kayf. Okay? Or color. For example, if you have tomato first is green. Little by little it becomes red. Then becomes completely red. Then becomes dark red almost. Yeah? This is haraka in what? In kayf. Okay? According to many philosophers, ilm is also kayf. When you little by little learn, this is also haraka in kayf, because for them ilm was kayf nafsani. Or for example, virtues and vices, you become more and more generous. This is haraka. Okay? The third category that Aristotle believed haraka is possible in it is ayn. Ayn means makan. Yeah? Means place. Of course, if you remember, we said ayn is the accident which is relation of something with its place. It's different from makan. Ayn is the relation that something has with its place. You remember? So, when you are moving from one place to another place, when you are walking, running, driving, this is also haraka in ayn. Anything apart from these 3, Aristotle said it's not possible to have haraka. About substance. he had the idea that you cannot have motion or haraka in substance because substance is the subject for haraka. Anything which changes, for example, an apple changes in its color or its in taste, but there must be apple that takes different colors or different taste. But if you say Jawhar is changing, then there is no fixed subject. What we have in the second time is different from what we have in the first time. So he had the idea that no way to accept haraka in Jawhar, but also in 6 other a'raz, but especially Jawhar. Out of 10 maqulat, 10 categories, only 3 he accepted. Kam, Kayf, Ain. Avicenna agreed with Aristotle about impossibility of haraka in Jawhar. Okay? And also about impossibility of haraka in many of a'raz. He only disagreed about wad'a, ma'ulatul wad'a. He said, in wad'a also we can have haraka. You remember wad'a? Al-harakatul wad'iyah. Wad'a is different from ayn because ayn is the relation of something with its place, space. Wad is also the relation of something with a space and with its own parts. Sometimes you don't change the place, but you make something upside down. This is not change in makan, it's change in condition. You know, for example, we said earth has 2 types of haraka. Al-harakatul wad'iyah, when earth goes around itself. The distance between earth and sun is not changed by al-harakatul wad'iyah. The distance can be changed by al-harakatul ayniyah. Is it clear? So, Ibn Sina said we can have haraka, motion, in wadr as well. And that is clear, like earth. We can have harakatul wad'iyah. Something changes its condition. So its parts change the relation between themselves or between themselves and the space that they occupy. Mullah Sadra agreed with Avicenna about adding Ain, Vaz to Ain and Kam and Kayf, but he made a very revolutionary transformation. He said we can even have haraka in Jawhar. Even he goes further. Not only we can have haraka in Jawhar, all jawahir, all substances in the physical world are changeable. So for someone like Aristotle and Avicenna, you can see this dunya, this physical world. We are not talking about God or angels. The physical world for Avicenna and Aristotle is divided into 2 groups. Things which are fixed, things which are changing. For Mullah Sadra, everything in this physical world is changing substantially. Even changes in a'rad are caused by change of the substance. Okay? So this is a big change. For Aristotle and Avicenna, we have things which are fixed and things which change. Then things which change, either it's gradual, we call it haraka, or it's instant, which we call it what? We had it before. Kawn fasad. Kawn means existence. Fasad means corruption. It means that something changes by the previous form being corrupted, means disappear, and a new form becomes Ka'im, becomes existent. Kaum means existence. Fasad means corrupt. For example, something, suppose for example, was liquid and becomes, for example, gas. The form of being liquid, liquidity, has gone. Now we have new form of being gas. And this change happens at once. At one point it becomes gas. Again, this gas at one point can become liquid. You have question?
Yes, I have a question. I can recall one Quranic verse, I don't know, I know the translation. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you look at the mountains, they are still on one place, but they are moving as well. I don't know which Quranic verse is this. So this Quranic verse is basically supporting the argument of Mullah Sadra and Aristotle as well. No, the first one. The very first one, Nazir Harkaladi, that you cannot have bath in the same water twice. So what would you say?
Yeah, so we, according to Mullah Sadra, we say that everything in this physical world is changing, although the changes that take place may not be something visible to us, because our sensitivity is limited. We can understand big changes, but it's not that. For example, when you look at an apple, almost every hour, if I don't say less, at least every hour, the color is changing. But maybe we notice every few days. Yeah? Like for example, when you have a child, sometimes you don't notice the growth. Yeah? Maybe after 1 month, 2 months. Sometimes people who don't live with the child, they notice better. Yeah, for example, say 2 weeks ago, I saw the child and now mashallah has grown. But if you can have very sensitive camera to take picture every minute, then perhaps and also you can measure them by computer, maybe you can find that every minute there is a change. But not obvious. For us it takes a few days to move. So changes are there, but not necessarily we can notice. Yes?
I'm just going to ask with regards to Kaun al-Fasad,
Yeah.
generation, degeneration, can that be applied to the intellect or the soul in terms
No.
of...
No intellect.
Not, well, okay, in terms of us as human beings, our akal or our soul, whatever either one of those two, can we say that this movement applies
For our
to
soul, because its essence is mujarrad, the essence is not changing. But because it can take different forms, then our soul is also changeable. As I told you, like knowledge, like virtues, these are changes to your soul, but not in its essence. Of course, Mullah Sadra was saying that even human beings can change so much that may stop being human being, become another type of being. Okay?
So the soul can change.
Even the soul can essentially change. But the general view among philosophers has been that we are all human beings, but we change in a higher level. in a secondary level. Humanity is fixed nature for us, but what type of human being you are to be, that's secondary. But for Mullah Sadra, even being human being is not fixed. You can stop being human in a good way or bad way. Pardon?
You can become an angelic level or you can become a beast.
For example, yes.
Sheikh, now about the example you gave about liquid and gas. For example, we have water, H2O, and it's changed to steam,
Yes.
H2 and oxygen. Is the changing in the substance or just form of this subject?
This can be in substance, according to Mullah Sadra. All these changes in a'raz are caused by change in the substance. Because for him, a'raz are in reality nothing other than modes and conditions for substance. Even in the book, there is a sentence which is maybe difficult for you to understand. It says, for him, a'raz are awarez tahliliyeh. Means only it's in our analytic thinking that we can distinguish them. He doesn't believe that a'raz, like previous philosophers, are separate from joke. You know, you remember we used to make a distinction between, for example, imkan for mahiyya and a'raz. He said imkan is araz tahlili. It's only by analysis that we can extract imkan from mahiyya. But color, taste, softness, we said, according to philosophers, these are existential, accidents. Mullah Sadra says no. All a'raz are only modes for substance. So any change finally has to go back to substance. Yes.
The example of liquid to gas, you have that change one to the other, but then you can actually change back.
You can.
You can
Yeah.
change back. So
Some
this
changes are possible
motion-
to go back. Some changes are not possible to go back.
This motion can actually be forwards and backwards.
Yeah.
As you have given the example for the tadrij, harkat tadriji, kam, kaf, and ain. Can you maybe have just one example for daf'i?
Daf'i, like something that happened, like for example, this apple drops once. When it becomes ripe, then at one moment it drops. Or for example, when we die, it takes place at once. It's not that the actual departure of the soul from body is gradual. At one point, it stops to belong to the body. Okay, so the idea of kawn of fasad, existence and corruption, if you want to translate, or generation and corruption, or whatever, generation, degeneration. As I said, this was the idea that Aristotle and people like him mentioned to justify, to explain instant changes. We have madde, we have surah, then that surah, that form with madde becomes secondary madde for another surah, and like this. Now, we go to the next lesson about what are the requirements of haraka, or implications of haraka. And begin discussion about harakat al-jawhari.
What are the requirements of change?
Haraka,
Motion.
motion, yeah, change, gradual change. People like Aristotle, Ibn Sina, they had the idea that for any haraka, any motion, you need 6 things. For any motion, any haraka, you need 6 things. Aristotle, Avicenna, 6 things must be there. We discuss them one by one. The first thing is al-mabda. Mabda. The beginning point of haraka. Any haraka has to have beginning. Second is muntaha, end. For example, you take the train from London to Manchester. The beginning is London, the end is Manchester. Okay? Any haraka needs mabda and muta. Of course, this example is for motion in aim, in space. But for example, if you have a fruit which was very sour and becomes sweet, again there is mabda and muntaha. That taste of sourness which had at the beginning and that sweetness which has at the end, this is mabda and muntaha. So it's not always a place. It can be camp, it can be cave. For example, a child is born, it is 62 centimeter. 62.1. Then it becomes 160, 170, 180. There is mabda and muntaha for this change.
Any quality.
Pardon?
Any quality.
This is not quality, this is quantity. This is taste is quality, this is quantity. So I gave you 3 examples. One is train, which is for ayn. One is sweetness and sourness, which is for quality. One is the size, which is for quantity.
Time? Time is all.
Time is the measure of this movement. Okay? So you need mabda and muntaha. Ayatollah Mutahari says it is clear that we need mabda and muntaha in most of the harakat, but what if you have a haraka which is infinite? Then there is no mabda and muntaha. So mabda and muntaha is for a haraka which takes place and finishes. Yeah? But if, for example, we have something which is always moving, then there will be no mabda and muntaha. Maybe, of course, Aristotle says, I don't believe in infinite haraka. Yeah? So, in any way, if you believe in infinite haraka, then there is no need for mabda and muntaha.
What about if something is moving in circle like the earth?
Yes, but it has started somewhere.
It started here, but there is no end for it. Like
Yes, so has beginning, no end. But is it possible to have no end in dunya? It's a question. Yeah?
Is there any haraka with no mabda and no munta?
So Ayatollah Mutahari says it's possible, at least philosophically, there is no way to to prove that it's impossible. Whether it takes place or not is another issue. The third thing is what we call al-mutaharrik.
The one who makes
Not who makes the move, who
who's moving?
who moves. Okay, mutaharrik, the one that is moving. Okay? For example, the baby that is growing, the mango which is becoming sweet, the train which is moving, متحرك. So, yeah. The fourth is the one that creates, maybe it's better to say fa'il al-haraka for this one and mutaharrik for another one. The one that creates the movement. Because fa'il, if we mean the one which is moving, it's okay. But maybe in some books say fa'il, the one that gives haraka. So, in Arabic it's clear. Mutaharrik and muharrik. Anyway, there are two things. Mutaharrik, the one which is moving. Muharrik, the one who gives movement.
So the file is to the muharrik.
Muharrik, yeah. Fa'il is muharrik.
So the mover is not the right definition for mutaharrik, because the one
Mover,
engaged in the movement.
mover, I mean in the sense of creator of movement.
Creator of the movement. But that is not mutaharrik.
And the moving is mutaharrik, yes. So, the train, as we said, is mutaharrik. The child is mutaharrik. The mango is mutaharrik. Who is giving haraka? Or what is giving haraka? That is muharrik. Okay? Fa'ilul haraka. Ayatollah Mutahari says, there is a difference, this is my way of explaining. There's a difference between philosophers and scientists. You know, in science, there is a principle of inertia, yeah? They say inertia? Or, pardon? Inertia. Inertia. In Farsi, we say mand. Mand means remaining the same. In science, we are told anything which is in motion will carry on moving unless there is intervention. And anything which is fixed remains fixed unless there is intervention. Yeah?
Newton's second law of motion.
Yeah. But for philosophers, they say any motion needs muharrik, a mover. But the mover can be inside. For example, a stone is thrown. In science, they tell us if you throw a stone in vacuum, in khala, it keeps going. Yeah? Pardon? Yeah, if there is khala, they say it keeps going forever. Philosophers say there is something inside the stone. The essence of a stone is the reason for this, that it will be going. Anyway, there's a discussion here between philosophers. You cannot say this haraka has no cause. It has cause. But it's based on the essence of the things. Something which has weight, yes.
It's a substantial harakatul jawhari.
No. Yeah, still we are not, this is even Aristotle who doesn't believe in harakat al-jawhari. Yes.
If something sets another thing in motion, so Allah sets something in motion, and there is
Yeah.
something in the essence of that thing that allows it to continue.
Mhm.
So then, how does that fit with the thing that Allah at every single point is causing the existence of everything? Whereas, you know, there is the other argument where once that initial cause causes that, the things set in motion will continue.
So, Ayatollah Mutahari says external factors are influential, but they are not really the cause. They are illata mu'addah. They prepare. It's like a strike. Yeah? you, for example, make a hit at this ball. This hit is not the cause, because if it was the cause, you should keep hitting. Because cause cannot be separate from ma'lul. It's illat i'dadi, like we said, we have father, mother, but they have passed away, the child is still there. Or builder and the construction. You remember in Baba Hadi Ash. So this heat is not the cause for harakah. Where is the cause for harakah? Is inside. Maybe if we want to use scientific language, we can say that energy which comes from external factor then is saved inside. Yeah? And then, yes.
Without the hit, whatever it has inside it, it will still not move.
Yeah? So without father, you cannot be born.
So it is a cause, kind of a cause.
There is illat i'dadi. Illat i'dadi is needed, but is not the cause. Yes.
What about the engine of the train or of the car? Can you say the muharrik inside it?
No. Even the engine itself is in need of harakah. Yeah, engine gives harakah to the train, but the harakah inside engine, again it's harakah.
Can we use this Quranic verse, Ya Yohannas antumul fuqara ilallah, wallahu ghaniyyun hamid? So here the faqr is within the human being, which is connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like if we can say connected, and it needs consistently. Is this relation is different than this one?
We constantly need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I don't think that's directly related to the issue of motion. Unless you find a connection. It seems that's different. Existentially we are dependent, but what about motions? Is our own existence bringing motion or something externally? In both cases we are dependent, because we and that external thing all are dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ayatollah Mutahari says the role of that external push or heat is just i'dadi. It just prepares, but the real cause is inside. Okay? The fourth, we said the thing that moves, the third, the fourth, the thing that gives the motion. The fifth is masafa, distance. In what you are changing? The train is changing its makan. It was in this point, for example, in London station, then it's going towards Manchester, northwest. So here the distance, the masafa, maybe in English distance is not a good translation for all types of the masafa. But even in Arabic, masafa is like that. So with a little stretching the meaning of distance, maybe we can use. So if it is change in makan, it's very obvious. This is the most maybe obvious type of change that we notice. But if that mango
Changing the taste.
is becoming sweet, what is masafa? The taste.
The taste.
Yeah.
Masafa means a change.
The change is
Masafa.
in taste.
Masafa means change, is it?
So masafa for that harakah is taste. Okay? If it changes in color, the tomato. Okay? So alhamdulillah, we have terrain and mango and tomato with a little child. That tomato which is changing from green to red, masafa for this change is what? The color. That baby, the change is in size, it's camera. Okay? So this is the fifth point that any haraka needs. There must be a masafa, in what it is changing. Okay? And then the other thing is zaman, time. As I said, time is the measure for change. Any change which is gradual. If it is kaun fasad, no. Doesn't need time. Yeah? Kaun fasad is in on. But any change which is gradual, any haraka, needs time. It can be few seconds. It can be few hours. It can be few days. It can be few years. It can be few centuries. It needs time. Yes? So there are 6 things that any haraka needs. Mabda, muntaha, mutaharrik, muharrik, masafa, and time. Aristotle said, because we need all these 6, we cannot have change in substance. Because change in substance means that you don't have mawzu' al-haraka. You don't have mutaharrik. Because we were saying this child is growing, this mango, this tomato, this train. But if it is substance which is changing, what is in common between the first time and the second time? If the substance has changed, it's not the same thing. So for them it was not possible to think of haraka in substance because they thought that we would have no fixed mutaharrik, no fixed mawdu'ul haraka. But Mullah Sadra says no. We have haraka in substance and there is no problem in having a type of mawzu' for haraka which is sayyal. So he used to say we have 2 types of wujud, thabit and sayyal. So it's the same tomato, but the tomato itself is also changing. But it's one existence which has changed, one being which is sayyal. Sayyal means like, ongoing. Sayyal means ongoing, flowing. Okay? So you shouldn't be worried. Like a river. Although water is flowing, but still you have one river. Don't think the water is the same, but also don't deny that this is one river.
Hassan, that was stuck.
Yeah, that's the main point. Okay? So, this is a big question for Aristotle and Ibn Sina even, that Mullah Sadra managed to solve. Of course, it could be very nice if we had Avicenna alive and Mullah Sadra alive to have discussion. But because Avicenna has passed away and we are convinced with what Mullah Sadra says, so we assume that Avicenna should be also happy with this. So, Alhamdulillah, we finished 2 lessons. Now, inshallah, next session, we have to go into arguments for Harakat al-Jawhari. Yes. We have to prove Harakat al-Jawhari.
I've got one question. You say the Mullah Sadr says that you can have, I think Ati Multazir say you can have haraka without mubtada muntaha. How did he say theoretically?
Atula Mutahari says.
Yeah, well, how did he say that? Well, how did he base his argument?
Because if you have Haraka, which is eternal,
Oh, I see, eternal.
then it has no mubtada or muntaha.
Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
No, Allah has no Haraka.
But there is no end and there is no start.
No end and no, but not in the sense of haraka. Suppose, for example, if we say that this world has always existed, is qadim, according to some philosophers, yeah, this world is qadim, always was there, and it's going to be always there. So then there is no beginning and end in time for this world. If we believe that it is qadim, you know, there is a discussion whether this world is hadith or qadim. Mutakallimin say it is hadith, but philosophers say it is qadim, but hadith zati, not hadith zamani. We had this discussion before. Okay, so we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to, inshallah, understand these important relations that we have with Him, with ourselves, with the world, but in the way that inshallah can help us in our journey. Because we have another motion, and that is our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ. Now you should think, inshallah, for next week, what is masafa for that journey? It's not in time or in space or color. What is the masafa for that journey? Alhamdulillah.